Welcome to the bold analysis. I am doing this video around, this is 3 a.m. Kenyan time. And I've just finished watching the JKL interview of the former IBC chairperson, Issack Hassan. I paid a lot of attention to that interview because that was the first interview by a former IEBC chairman sitting in the mainstream. It was also the first of even Issack Hassan commenting about the Kenyan election 7 years after leaving the IEBC. And he attributed his absence or failure to comment about how maybe media reported their removal from office. I pride myself as amongst the journalists that covered Firimbi operation. Firimbi operation is the mass action that ejected Issack Hassan and his team at the helm of IBC. So I really covered, and I could really figure out when he was making presentations, when he was making his point about what transpired there. Now, he's also making that interview in just a review of his book that was launched earlier in April in the light of gripping inside perspective of what is happening behind the scenes. And so because, I love politics, I decided we do I paid a lot of attention, keen attention to some few facts he said there that I want us to look at because is actually giving us a sneak peek of what expecting. Issack Hassan is saying that 2 weeks ago, he called Marjan Hussein, and I believe that was in the light when the heated discussion about the server was going on, asking Marjan Hussein, who was a former IBC commissioner, that what is making it difficult for them to open that server so that they bring an end to the political closure. I need to put a disclaimer that a note that the former IBC chair was also a very clean person. He was also smeared or also linked to a lot of issues when he was in office. But Marjan Hussein told him that what is the end game of opening the server? That is number one. And probably in a response to that, it's actually showing that the server question is magic. But my intention was, what dragged my attention is, if a former IBC chair can also have that feeling that what is making it difficult to open the server, then really, what has been wrapped as a non-existing thing is actually a question that is viable. Remember, this is a man that was also at the helm of a Kenyan election for some time. And he gave an example and said, from his point of view, that we cannot put election to closure. And audit of an election after it is done is not something that is wrong. Because in Afghanistan, after 2014 election, there was contestation of the results and the UN was called and they did 100% audit of the results and the winner was given his win. So, it is saying that despite, even though the commission is independent, but they must strike a balance to make sure that they satisfy the questions that is coming from the population, especially from the masses, because according to what he said, I think Marjan Hussein told him about the possibility of interfering with the provider of the software the other side, because there is a limit as to what extent can be exposed or what extent can be accessed in terms of the question of the server. So the fact that someone who was also in charge of elections and is still spearheading elections across the globe is also asking the magical question on server points out a bigger picture. But I'll try to delve deep on that in that. I want us to look at other details, but as before we look at the other things that also Issack Hassan spoke about, I'm bringing to your attention that we are finishing our fundraiser for Mzee's surgery that is supposed to be held on Friday. This Mzee here suffered hemorrhoids and is due for a surgery that is costing 67,000. We had a deficit of 20,000 that we are pushing, and we are kindly requesting us that those who can at least contribute, we finish up. We are going to send this money midday on Thursday morning hours, so that, because I understand the surgery will be done on Friday. So I'm just reaching out to you. I've pinned the number there so that we help. For those who are in Kakamega, is currently diagnosed in Mkumu Hospital. And of course, you can also help us just to fact check more of this. Ladies and gentlemen, there are some questions has been asked about it, and giving a review about 2013, which was also contested. You know, since the promulgation of the new constitution, we've not had a smooth election without contestation, that is not contested. I know that to some political analysts, or rather some observers, also look at it as if it is just a question of human wants are unlimited, or it is about leaders not accepting. You can even remove Raila in the picture, and I can tell you, if a presidential election is to be done today with all factors kept constant, despite the fact, even if it is not Raila, it will be contested. So I find it a bit an escape narrative. He said one thing. He was asked about, why do you think there is a pressure in the presidential election while the others are not there? And he's saying we should stagger those elections so that we do parliamentary and maybe parliamentary and governor and the MCAs one day, then we pick specific day, a date for the presidential. I believe, I wish we start with the presidential. We start with the presidential first. Okay, if we start with the presidential, people may not go to vote for the rest, maybe. But I wish we also make that be one day, because the reason I want us to start with the presidential is because if you conduct the other elections, the outcomes of those elections will actually be used as to do exit poll. They will largely influence the outcome of the next election. In fact, but again, it's an advantage, because a situation where a ruling coalition had got many members of parliament, and you can also make that projection, and it will bring a lot of excitement to voters. 2008, ODM had many MPs, and even look at the speaker election when Kenneth Marende won the seat and the deputy was Farah Mailim, both on the side of ODM, and people were even asking how Kibaki was going to manage. So when we conduct governor, MP, Senate, and the other and the MC elections, it will give us a very good ground to exit poll and ease the pressure, because at least people have a perception of what to expect. But again, it's also helped to draw the diagonals. Now, he's also talking about the management structure. We should merge the CEO and the treasurer, the chairman and the CEO should be the same person. As we speak, the commission has two structures. We have secretariat led by the CEO, and we have the commission, which is the political organ and the policy-making organ of the commission led by the chairman. So because of these two levels of operation, these two sectors of operation, of course, the commission can fire the CEO probably. That's normally it. According to his interview, that's what I captured there. But there is a bit of a questions on what exactly happened, on what exactly is happening. So he's talking about it. Our election have had challenges before. And when touching about Msando, he's saying that he's actually confessing that 2013, there were some mishaps. And probably if they would have had the structure of 2017, maybe they would have solved some. Now, there is a good message to some civil servants who, when they are in the positions of, they're in office, they do political leaning and they succumb to political pledges. He's saying after they were handed out of office in 2017, they were supposed to be promised some jobs by Uhuru Kenyatta by then, and they gave their CVs to Kinyua, who was the head of public service by then. But those jobs were never given. In fact, him later, after one and a half years later, he was then to be given some job. But I want to get to it about this. My observation about restricting myself to the election, the server question, and integrity of election. Delving at the question he asked Marjan Hussein about the election, there is some few observations I'm seeing. Raila Odinga must push the audit of 2022 elections. And the reason why the audit of 2022 elections must be at the table, I'm seeing the bipartisan talks have formed a hybrid system where there are some specific members, they've subdivided themselves into groups. So there are some members that are going to tackle the IBC question, and I think from that they're going to present to the whole team, then maybe they find a way they can reach a consensus. But the reason why Raila Odinga should push for the audit of the 2022 elections, because that is what will help to come up with raft election reforms. In fact, the commission is sitting, the bipartisan talks we've formed is talking about commission and how the commissioners, how to pick commissioners. That's a very simplistic thing. I think that's the easiest. What will be the benchmark of what will trigger what we need to do moving forward is audit of election. Because why? Since 2007, we have never audited our elections after they're done. We've never audited presidential elections. We should embrace doing this one. And specifically, the reason why that one is needed is because of the ICT in it, the hybrid system in it. And I believe that from even what he's saying, those who came up with, those who designed our election cycle that will start from announcement of results, then maybe conceding or rejecting, then heading to Supreme Court, then after Supreme Court, that becomes the last nail in our election cycle. The framers of 2010 constitutions envisioned that as a way to give us stability because we were coming from 2007. But then 10 years later, we are confronted with new realities. And one of the new reality here is the rigidity of our constitution, as it prescribes handling of election cycle is not bearing a good solution for our election. This is what I'm saying. And I want to make it very simple so that I drive the point home. It is not true by reality now that a verdict from Supreme Court is enough to put our election to a closure. It's not true. No, we've solved one problem of avoiding a situation where someone who is uncomfortable with the results is going to the street directly. But ultimately, we are evolving and we're heading back to the street. So we are still containing, we just have a reprieve that 1 month we go and it put it. I think what we should embrace, that the rigidity of our constitution is not giving us any fruit as far as solving our political problem. So we must escalate. And in the constitutional review process, I believe by those voices that are saying, 10 years later, that was our first constitution. We did not prescribe ourselves how long we need to think before we even think about the constitution. It's time we think about relooking it. We must increase. We must broaden the spectrum of reviewing election so that it doesn't end at Supreme Court. Even the Supreme Court will give us a president, but moving forward, we should entertain and appreciate auditing election even after. Even if it is not for giving final results and changing the presidency, but we must do that to help us have progressive elections. In some time, we might reach there. But for now, we need to think about it. And the reason why this is needed is, looking at the way, listening to what Hussein was saying, the commission's silence on the server question is out of guilt. I know here, I've been asking many times that, why are they silent? Fine. Fine, they want to put the election to a closure, but it cannot be put to a closure. Why are they silent? And from what that chairman is saying, that former chairman is saying, is that they owe Kenyans some explanation. They owe Kenyans a response. I know, and from what they're saying, we don't want to connect about the magical server question, because there is an extent to which the provider can grant access. But that also has, you need to get a balance between regulations, the firewalls that have been created by the provider of the server, and also public expectations on transparency. So this points out that the silence over the server is actually out of guilt. Lastly, this is what I see. We have a long way to have a non-contested election. I would urge you, even me myself, I'm going to get that book. I probably by next week I'll get it, so that we get it from an insider perspective. I watched that, it's nearly 1 hour interview. And general perception and general understanding there is, we are a long way to solving our election because they're non-contested. If the former ABC is saying, but by 2017, tribalism was at its peak, where after Oswago, remember the chicken gate scandal, after Oswago left, they were trying to look for a Luo. As one criterion of getting someone there was trying to get a Luo to replace him, and they tried to approach some lawyer, I think Apollo Mboya. And somehow, I don't know what happened, until then they landed on Ezra Chiloba. I think after not setting a Luo, or some other factors came on board. But now, that was 2007, but I believe that now it's at its peak. Because by then, maybe it was still silent. You know, he's talking about, he was supposed to get some commission, and Raila was supporting him because he used to come from some tribe. So, to fix our governance temporarily, in process, we must fix winner takes all. We should not go to 2027 election without this question. The winner takes all, with the way people are bragging about shareholding, we must think about solving winner takes all. I don't know whether it will take the Ruto's route of opposition or expanded executive. The opposition, as much as we highly brag about putting the government on check, but it's also a body that seems to be pushed at the periphery. It's not part of the national cake. By the way, the opposition's role can be done by even the civil service. Even us are already playing that role. So, what I concur with him 100% is that we should think about winner takes all. But my takeaway from that, our election cycle should not end at Supreme Court. If we should not normalize a situation where 5 people will decide at the IBC and another 7 people decide at Supreme Court. These 14 people are not enough. We should escalate and make it be a process. What stops us if we have a contested election? Before we even go to Supreme Court, to chukua all the ballot boxes, bring the international bodies and other bodies together. Let's put all the ballot boxes in Stadium, Nyayo. Let's count all here. Then if there is a contest, if there is a difference between the results in Nyayo after the 100% audit and what was maybe by the agents and what was also done at the ICT, then we head to Supreme Court. We need to think about it. That's my take. And thank you guys for watching. I did this video late night. I didn't even know I will deliver it, but thank you. And let's meet in the next.